guys, welcome to another edition of K-Cards Baseball. Thanks for joining me tonight on this fine Thursday evening, wherever you might be. So tonight on the channel, super excited about our content in the video that we're making tonight. We are talking about collecting on a budget and focusing on vintage card collecting on a budget. So tonight on the channel, what we're going to look at are top players, or basically our top 10 players from 1952 to 1971. So we'll break down each player, talk about why I put them in the top 10. Again, this is just my ranking. I'm not going off of historical data or any other sources, basically. So I looked at players whose main playing careers were during those years. So there might be some guys that you might think of that should be on the list. For example, I don't have Pete Rose on the list because his rookie year was 1963. So by 1971, he had played 8 years, so less than half of his total playing time, and I think his prime years were basically from the mid to late 70s were his prime years, so I didn't put him in the top 10 in this ranking because, again, we're looking at 52 to 71. And we'll talk about more about players that might have been left off the list towards the end of the video. But I'm going to keep this part short because it might get to be a little bit of a long video, and I'm going to try to keep her around 20 minutes. So we'll see how we do on that. You guys know I have a tendency to kind of ramble on. Hopefully that doesn't happen. So I'm going to switch over to the computer, and we're going to look at starting at number 10, my 10th player on my list, and we're going to look at cards that are available from each player in my top 10 for under $150, that you can buy their cards under $150. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get any of these players' rookie cards for $150 or under unless they are in extremely poor condition, because most of these guys' rookie cards are going to be north of $1,000. So anyways, guys, let's go ahead and take a look at eBay and switch over to the computer. Hang on 1 second, and we'll talk to you in a minute. So first up on our list is Brooks Robinson for the Baltimore Orioles, a longtime third baseman. I don't think that he ever played with anybody else. I think he pretty much played his whole career. In fact, I know he played his whole career with the Baltimore Orioles, which nowadays is a tremendous feat. Brooks, his playing career was from 1955 to 1977. He did have a lifetime batting average of .267, 2,848 hits, and 268 home runs. I would still consider him probably a top 5 third baseman that has ever lived. He was an amazing third baseman defensively. As far as his cards go, as you can see, there's quite a few of them that you're going to be able to find for under $150. Here's a 1961 for $52. Here's a 74 for $251, and a PSA 9. That's a heck of a deal there. And as we run through the list, there's a 65 right there. That's one of my favorite Brooks Robinson cards. This one actually sold only for $13.50 in very good to excellent condition. So I would think that it might possibly have a small crease, but I wouldn't say it would be a significant crease. So to get that card at $13.50 is a really good price. So if you shop around a little bit for Brooks Robinson, you can definitely get him for cheap. Here's another one for $5.24 in excellent to mint condition. And yeah, so his cards are out there and they are available. This card right here, as you guys probably know, is one of the worst baseball cards that has ever been made. His 1958 card. He looks like he is 105 years old in this picture. I don't know what happened. It is probably one of the most iconic, goofiest pictures of all time, because he's probably only, well, I don't know, 21, 22 in this picture in 1958. So this would be his second year card, and to have him look like that, pretty crazy. So that is Brooks Robinson. Number 9 on our list is Mr. Harmon Killebrew. You guys know me. I just had to figure out a way to get a Minnesota Twin in there, and Harmon Killebrew, of course, was the most likely candidate. Well, let's talk about Harmon here for a minute. A career .256 batting average, 2,086 hits. Of course, 573 home runs. He is a Hall of Famer. 2,435 games. His Topps cards are 1955 to 1975. I was at the card show today, and some of his cards were ridiculously priced. They're mostly upwards of $800 and better, even for some of his later year cards, which I thought was pretty crazy. This is one of my favorite cards, the 1959. Here's one for $15. Again, a low grade, has a crease on it. Yeah, but if you shop around, you can get a fairly decent card. Here's a very good to excellent with a crease. You can't really put it very good to excellent if it has a crease on it. For $29, that would be just a very good card. Anyways, guys, that's Harmon Killebrew. Moving on to our next person. Next up on our list is Bob Gibson, pitcher for the St. Louis Cardinals from 1959 to 1975. His career stats: 251 wins, 174 losses, 2.91 ERA, 255 complete games. That's almost unbelievable. He had more complete games than he had wins. 251 wins and 255 complete games. Can you even imagine that from a pitcher nowadays? That would never happen. We'll never see that ever happen again in baseball. Even after I am long gone. 3,117 strikeouts. He is also one of two pitchers that was a two-time World Series MVP. World Series MVP in 1964 and 1967. His 1967 performance in the World Series, when he won Game 1, 4, and 7, is still considered one of the best pitching performances ever in Major League Baseball. He had a 1.00 ERA in that World Series and was just completely dominant. Stuff of legend. So you can see his 1967, speaking of 1967, very good to excellent, again with a crease. For $9.56. Here's one for says a low grade, 66 for $31. Here's another creased card for $13. I don't really like to buy cards raw with a crease. It just is got to have a little bit better condition than that. Let's see what else we got. 63. Again, it's a low grade card for $18. That one is definitely a low grade card for $7. Here's a 61 and a SGC 6 for $100. Might be a little bit on the high side, but again, it's pretty clear that you can get his mid 60s cards here's one for $42 in excellent plus condition for 63. Pretty cool card. Looks like it's centered pretty well too. Anyways, for $42. That is not a bad deal, getting a Bob Gibson for under $50 in excellent condition from the mid-60s. So that is Mr. Bob Gibson. Next up on our list is Frank Robinson, played from 1956 to 1976. Most of his years were spent with the Baltimore Orioles. That's what he's most known for. He started out with the Reds, and then he went to the Baltimore Orioles, I think in 1966. Yeah, here's his 1966 card right here with the Baltimore Orioles for $10. And so he was a two-time World Series champion in 66 and 1970. So he was a great player for a very long time. Career batting average 294, 2,943 hits. Didn't quite get to 3,000, 57 hits shy of that, but he did have 586 home runs. A definite Hall of Famer. You can see what his cards are basically go for. Here's a 1960 with a crease for 31. Here's a pretty decent 61 PSA 7. Wow. For $125. That's still not a bad price for a 61 Frank Robinson in a PSA 7 near mint. That's pretty good. So anyways, that is Frank Robinson. Moving on to the next, number 6 on our list, is Sandy Koufax, the aforementioned Sandy Koufax, a 2-time World Series MVP. I know he beat my Twins and was the MVP in 1965. A heck of a pitcher for a long time. I shouldn't say that. A heck of a pitcher for the years that he played. 1955 to 1966 were his playing years. He definitely retired early. He was starting to experience some soreness in his arm, and he decided that his health for the rest of his life was more important than his playing career, so he retired at an early age. I think he retired not too far past the age of 30. In his very early 30s, he retired. 165 wins and 87 losses, a 2.76 ERA, 137 complete games, and he is one of very few pitchers that has more strikeouts than he has innings pitched. A pretty cool feat. His top cards are 1955 to 1966. You can see, well, here's his 1956 card for $656 in a PSA 6. That's pretty good. I like this card a lot, this 1966, which was his last card for 2102. And let's see what else we have here. Here's a creased 1961 for 29. Seems like a lot of these ones with Greg Morris cards are having creasing issues. Here's another one, very good, excellent, for $42 with a crease. I have this card right here. So $92 for the 56 right here, low grade. So that is Sandy Koufax. Here's one really cool, 1965 PSA 8 for $1,200. Anyway, so that is Sandy Koufax. Let's move on to our next player, which is Mr. Roberto Clemente. One of my favorite players, as you OG people know, people that have been with me for a while know that every time I come across a Roberto Clemente card, when I'm doing vintage card auction previews, I do rave about him and watching him when I was a younger man. He is one of the very first players that I was aware of and got behind that was not a Minnesota Twin named Harmon Killebrew or Rodney Grew. He, of course, died at an early age on New Year's Eve in 1972, helping out his native country of Puerto Rico, bringing them supplies. And so it was a pretty tragic issue, pretty tragic day in not only the sport of baseball, but also across the country, because we lost a excellent human being. Anyways, so let's move on and look at his cards here. Here's 1966, again a crease card for 62. Here's a nice PSA 6 for 111, 1970. And this is kind of a cool card. This one has both Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, and I think it has Orlando Cepeda on it too, so 3 Hall of Famers on that card for $35 in the 68 RBI Leaders card. Pretty cool card there. Here's 1970, 29. Here's a 1962, again crease card for 28. So that is Roberto Clemente. As you can see, pretty easy to get his cards. This is one of my favorite cards, even though this is a reprint. For $20, but the 1972 card is one of my favorite cards in the history of baseball. I just think it's a really cool looking card. Not only all that, but also his last card when he was alive. He did have a 73, obviously, but that was more posthumously than anything else that he had that card in the 73 set. So that is Roberto Clemente. Moving up the list, we have Mr. Cub, Mr. Ernie Banks, who played from 1953 to 1971. His top cards were 1954 to 1971. 512 home runs, 274 batting average, 2,583 games played. He was Mr. Let's Play 2. He coined that famous phrase, of course, as most of us that have been following baseball for a long time are aware of. So let's take a look at his cards real quick. Here's a really cool, excellent condition 1966, one of my favorite cards. In fact, I own this card myself. Probably not a PSA 5, but $56 for 1966 Ernie Banks is a heck of a price. There's a 68 for $17.50. Really cool card here, 1955 Topps card for $225. I know it's a little bit on the higher price, but a PSA 4.5, very good to excellent plus, for $225. That is not a bad deal. Here's his rookie card right here, and a 1.5 for $450. If you have that kind of money to spend, more power to you. And I think that's a really cool card. In fact, it is one of the more iconic cards. I'd rank this card as one of the top 10 cards from the 1950s. Maybe sometime I'll do a list like that, like the top 10 cards from each decade. I think that might actually be a pretty cool series. So I just have that pop into my head. So you guys can let me know down in the comments what you think of that. Anyways, let's move on here. So that is Mr. Ernie Banks. Number 3 on our list is Hank Aaron. I would consider the next 3 players, number 3, 2, and 1, to be the top 3, the clear top 3 from that decade. First up, of course, is Mr. Hank Aaron. Here's a 1966 for $33.22. But anyways, he played from 1954 to 1976, had a .305 batting average, 3,771 hits, 755 home runs. His Topps cards go from 1954 to 1976. So 1954, you had both Ernie Banks and Hank Aaron rookie cards. So that is that makes that set worth a pretty fair amount of money. Here's a 59 for $149. I'm not going to bring up this 1964 because again, it's a crease card. So like I said, I like to stay away from crease cards. Here's his last card, 1976, when he was back with the Milwaukee Brewers in a 2.5 at $12.50. That's actually a pretty low grade card for 1976. I think a 76 would be a higher grade. Here's a 75 for $26. Here's a cool card. I like the 58, one of my favorite Aaron cards, for $145 to $147. I might have to take a look at this card show tomorrow and see if I can find a decent 58 Aaron. That's a pretty cool card. Here's a 64, which is also a really cool card for $80. So as you can see, it's still pretty affordable, keeping him under $100 for his middle 60s cards, which isn't a bad price at all for Aaron cards from the 1960s. Next up on our list is Mr. Willie Mays. 1951 and 1973, he played 22 years, 302 batting average, 3,283 hits, 660 home runs, and 338 stolen bases. That's unbelievable to have a guy hit 660 home runs and still steal 338 stolen bases. That's pretty incredible. His Topps cards were 1952 to 1974. Some people consider Willie Mays to be the best player that's ever played. I would be a person that would support that argument. I think he is probably the best player. I mean, I don't remember a lot about him playing in the middle part of the 70s. Obviously, I'd heard of him, seen him play a few times, but he wasn't the guy that really stood out in my mind, other than to say he was a heck of a player. I've got this card right here, the 66, for $41. The 66 is a pretty popular card of his, but I think it's a really cool card. Number 1 in the set. Any other ones jump out at me? Greg Morris cards seems to be selling a lot of this vintage stuff. Here's a 72 in-action card for $22.50. Let's see, here's a Sporting News. I think this is Sporting News, or Sport Magazine, number 46 from 1958 for $50. So he is very affordable for being number 2 on the list and being what I would consider to be the best player to ever play the game. I would put him in that category, Mr. Willie Mays. So let's move on to our top and number one player. Can you guys figure it out? And I think it's pretty obvious who the number one player is, but let's go ahead and talk about him. Number one on our list is, of course, Mr. Mickey Mantle. He had his Topps cards from 1952 to 1969, even though his rookie year, I think, was 51 Bowman. His stats, 298 batting average, 2,415 hits, and 536 home runs. I was surprised that home run total was only 536. I thought it was significantly more than that. People talk about Mickey Mantle like he was the greatest home run hitter of all time. I think that is reserved for Hank Aaron. I wouldn't put Mickey Mantle in that category. Didn't have as long of a playing career as some of the other players on the list. Obviously, Willie Mays playing 22, Hank Aaron playing 22, even Ernie Banks at 18 or 19 years, and then you got Mickey Mantle at 17 years. He obviously had issues away from the game of baseball. I think that obviously shortened up his career a little bit. Sometimes I wonder why his prices are the way they are, as high as they are, and why he is such a hot card to get, and always probably will be. I was at the card show the other day and I saw two of his 1952s. One was authentic and one was I think it was an SGC1, not even a PSA, and one was 28,000 and the other one was like 35,000, and they were in really rough shape. If you want to get a Mickey Mantle card for under $100, I've got one for you right here. Just message me down below, and if you want to pay $75 for this card, I would be more than happy to sell it to you. Obviously, you got a paper loss issue, even though, curiously enough, there isn't any creases. Oh, there is one crease on the card up here across the N, or across the K. Other than that, it's a pretty decent card. $75 and she can be yours. I've tried to sell that card. I might end up having to drop it down to $50. I don't know if anybody's going to buy it with the amount of paper loss it has, but you guys can let me know down in the comments what you think of that card. Anyways, that is Mr. Mickey Mantle, and that concludes our top 10 list of the top 10 players from 1952 to 1971. Please let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this list that we just talked about, and I would be curious to get your feedback, who you think I might have left off the list, besides like Yogi Berra. I don't know who else. Maybe some of you guys might say Pete Rose, but again, I gave my the reasons why I didn't have him on the list earlier in this video. So guys, thanks for joining me tonight. I might do another one of these lists, like the 72 to, let's say, 90 era, and do that same thing where we pick the top 10 players from that era. You guys can let me know what you guys think about who the top 10 would be from that era down below. I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say. So anyways, guys, I'll cut you guys out of here. Thanks for watching me tonight. Again, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe. Would greatly appreciate it. And be safe out there and happy collecting. Thanks, guys.